You get lectured to. You may have some conversation, maybe. You take notes and or you record it, and then you leave. Nowadays, hey, I'm sure you got a lot of students that are cutting class because they got a partner that videotapes the entire thing, maybe even surreptitiously. So now you get the benefit of actually seeing and hearing what the professor has to say. But if you are not that type of learner, like if you're the type of learner who learns more from constant conversation, breaking things down, being challenged critically, that might not work for you. Doesn't mean you're not intelligent. Rhonda writes, yes, and students can start taking an SAT test in the 7th grade. Wow. Good morning, Roosevelt. Good to see you. Good morning, Rhonda. Roosevelt writes, morning, team and I. Once again, Obama has shown his overwhelming support for gay/transgender community. Forcing schools across the country to allow transgender bathrooms a risk of funding loss? ? With a stroke of a pen, he passed the legislation? ? Really? ? Wow. If he just do that for just one of the many issues that plague African Americans at large, I'm telling you, Obama has marginalized the black community and taken us for granted. He went there, huh? Now, what is he speaking of? If you don't know, you can find a link on my personal Facebook page right now. An article that comes from Cincinnati.com written by Greg Cordy. Here's the title: Schools Must Allow Transgender Bathrooms, according to the Department of Education. Get ready for it. Get ready. I told you, restrooms, public spaces are going to be the latest battleground. Okay? You go back 60 years ago, 60 years ago, it was a battleground because they wanted separate but equal restroom facilities. White folks didn't want to use the restroom with black folks, basically. Okay? And now heterosexual, straight people, non-transgender people have an issue with using public restrooms with transgender individuals. Later today, the U.S. Department of Education is going to tell school districts that federal law requires them to allow students to use restrooms and locker rooms consistent with their gender identity. Let it sink in now. Consistent with their gender identity. That doesn't mean consistent with the gender that they were born. That means consistent with the gender that they identify with. What? That's right. That they identify with. So what does that mean? That means that if you have someone who was born a woman, but now they identify as a man, even if that means that they haven't taken the necessary surgical steps to anatomically become a man, then schools across the nation are going to have to make accommodations with them in terms of public restrooms. How do you feel about it? And how do you feel about the larger point that Roosevelt made, that it appears that Obama, and again, a lot of people have made this point. You tell me your thoughts on it. Then when it comes to everybody else's issue, non-black, he can get tough. He can put his foot down. He can make it an issue. He can leverage the might of the office of the president for those issues. However, when it comes to black America, we hear things like, well, the Affordable Health Care Act is for everybody. Speaking of which, a judge has now invalidated a portion of the of so-called Obamacare. I'll give you more details after the top of the hour. These Republicans will stop at nothing. How do you feel about that? Is Roosevelt right? Does he have a point? I mean, what do you expect Obama to do for black America? Exactly. This now escalates the pressure from the Obama administration on the very contentious public debate over transgender rights. We are going to have to come to some agreement on this. Is the fight for transgender rights synonymous, right? Is that a fight for civil rights? I'm going to put it out there like that. Quote, when a school provides sex-segregated activities and facilities, transgender students must be allowed to participate in such activities and access such facilities consistent with their gender identity. Okay? That's a letter that was signed by 2 Obama administration officials responsible for enforcing civil rights law. That's right. It gets deep. Gets deep. Now, you know, down in North Carolina, they've got like these, well, North Carolina sued the federal government, then the federal government sued North Carolina. They've got trading lawsuits over their state's law requiring people to use public restrooms that correspond to the sex of their birth. Is there anything wrong with saying, listen, if you have gone through the surgical procedure, okay, you've gone through the process, then okay. If you were a man and now surgically you have gone through the process and now anatomically you are a woman, okay, great. That makes perfect sense. Does anybody disagree with that? I think we agree with that. I think the issue is if someone just identifies with a different sex or gender, should I say, not sex, with a different gender, but yet they still are anatomically the gender that they were born. So for instance, you got a man who anatomically is still a man, but he dresses like a woman. I'm using very general terms here. We all grown folks, follow along. Okay. He dresses like a woman. He wants the world to refer to him as a woman, but anatomically he is a man. The Obama administration is saying that because that individual, that man identifies as a woman, then you have to get comfortable with the fact that that man who identifies as a woman, but anatomically is a man, is in the woman's restroom. Do you have a problem with that? What is your problem with it exactly? Like I told you, this is going to make people develop more bladder control. A lot of people are going to be holding it. I don't have the clip for you, but I just came across this morning another video of a mother who's walking through Target, right, shouting down the sinners in protest, a one-woman protest about the unisex bathrooms, their policies on transgenders in public restrooms. Are we really going through this? I mean, what is the most fair solution? Maybe that's the question I should ask. What is the most fair solution? Eb G writes, good morning, Eb. She writes, the ACT and SAT test does not stop students from going to college. It may mean you don't go to a certain college, or they may need to take some remedial courses first. She's right. She's right. But if you've got a college in mind, and they say, listen, if you want to go to this college, you got to have a certain SAT score, and you don't make that SAT score, then guess what? You're not going to that school. You're not going to that school. Simple as that. Kenny writes, I have horrible text anxiety. However, when you have those type of issues, etc., you must seek out assistance to decrease those problems. Right. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being honest, Kina. There's a lot of people that have test anxiety. So maybe the test anxiety is the issue and not the test itself. That's all I'm saying. Tracy writes, the mystery about the test for me is what is on the test was actually covered in schools. What if you have a low achieving, low performing school and I actually don't cover everything is on the test? The material becomes foreign to those kids on the test when they take it. You're right. That's a good point. It's a very good point. And that's a sad circumstance. That's a sad circumstance. And see, what I would say is pull your kids out. But what if you're in a situation, mom and dad, and you can't move? You can't pull your kid out. Your kid has to go to that low-performing neighborhood school. That's sad. Now, that's a sad circumstance. And I would imagine that there's a lot of kids who might be caught up like that. Does anybody have any suggestions? Ed writes, test anxiety is real. It does not make sense for a student to have a 3.7 GPA and not be able to graduate. So your 12 years of hard work means nothing? It's not right. It means a lot. It means that you earned a GED. It means that you earned a GED. I mean, 7 times to take any test, and it's the same test. Of course, they're going to change the combination of the questions around, and you might even get a different set of questions. But after 7 times, you can't tell me you're not going to come across some of the same questions on that test. Kenny Keener writes, I agree with Mr. Ivey related to different learning styles. I have a different way of learning. Right. And that's the sad part about it is that some of these schools don't take the time to ascertain what each individual's student's learning style is. They just kind of just throw it all at you and hope that it sticks. Rhonda writes, most schools incorporate the Montessori style of learning by using all learning styles. Right. You're right. But is it heavily balanced? Is it heavily weighted? I mean, is it evenly balanced? Is it evenly weighted? Pat writes, she agrees with Eb G. Eb writes, some people are good test takers, yet they aren't doing well in school. Much lower GPA, and now they get to graduate and she can't. We have to know it's a bit more complicated than just not being able to pass the test. We must do better. So my question for you, Eb G, is what is your suggestion? Should they allow them to take the test 14 times? If they get close to the threshold, let's say they're 10 or 15 points away, should they allow them to pass anyway? I mean, what is the remedy for the situation right here, right now? She writes, and passing that test did not indicate a person is academically or socially prepared for college. Most college courses don't give tests like that anymore because college educators understand testing is not a good indicator of the students retaining the information. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, people have been taking tests since the beginning of time. Some things should remain old school. And if you've got a small percentage of the students who are not passing, yet everyone else is, how can you blame the test itself? There must be something going on with that individual student. Either they're not working hard enough and they're acting like they are. That's number one. They've got some kind of test-taking anxiety. That's number two. Or their learning style is not being appreciated. Okay, it's being ignored. And so basically they're not being properly set up to even pass the test. And I get it. But Eb, what would be your suggestion right here, right now? Something we can implement within the next couple of years. Tracy writes, Tanika, I heard the GED test is harder. Mike writes, right at Eb G. Carolyn writes, what's the purpose of the test? Well, what's the purpose of your driving test? What's the purpose of the ACT, the SAT? If you want to go to law school, you got to take the LSAT. You want to go to graduate school, you got to take graduate tests. You want to go to medical school, you got to take medical tests or medical school examinations. Testing is a part of a fact of life. Thousands, tens of thousands of people do it all the time. Why should the rules be changed because a small few can't get it? Okay? That's what I say. Carolyn writes, what's the purpose of the test? ? Who felt there's needed to be such a thing? Are there other states that have exit testing? Just curious. Tanika writes, I took it several times. The only part I didn't pass was the math portion. Tanika writes, I'm a visual learner. If I see it, then I've got it. Okay. Good to hear. Angela writes, when my daughter was in elementary school in the 1990s in Lakota District, they identified children's learning styles. Very important. It's the first thing you need to do. You cannot teach a student if you don't know how that student processes the information. Okay, you could be talking to the wall, literally. It's just not going to stick. And it has nothing to do with intelligence. Their brain isn't hardwired like that. You know, everyone has a different personality. Everyone has a different learning style. And everybody's learning style is a part of the grand diaspora, so to speak, right? We're all different. Everybody contributes. Carolyn writes, why aren't there options in place for people that can't pass the test other than getting your GED? Well, like what kind of options? You get 7 chances in the state of Ohio. After that, you get a GED. Now, it'd be one thing if they said, listen, you don't get a GED at all. Holla. You just didn't pass. You got no certificate. Okay? Is there a big difference between getting a high school diploma and a GED? I mean, yeah, in terms of self-esteem, socially, yeah, that's a milestone. That's a milestone. Let me be real with you. I nearly did not graduate from high school myself. When I got to the 10th grade, for numerous reasons, I decided I didn't want to go to school anymore. So I just stopped going. No more school for me. I was in a situation where my mother got a job and she was required to go